Hi, I'm Katelyn or Katie Reagan, and I represent the Back-to-Back Mercer County, New Jersey visual arts team. I've always been interested in art ever since I was a child. Most of my art background is either self-taught or learned in school, but I really began to flourish when I began going to one-on-one art lessons with my art teacher, April, in 2018. I'm very involved with theater in my high school. I create sets for plays by constructing and painting them. Crew is a great place to build relationships, and when you go to middle or high school, I strongly recommend you join theater, either as crew or as a cast member. Anyways, I generally love to create art, and I'm so excited to teach you about one of the pieces I've created. This is a self-portrait collage piece. The process of creating it was so fun, and I'm so proud of how it turned out. First, the backstory. I made this piece, The Bubbles of Life, because I really wanted to make a meaningful self-portrait. Even after all my 15 years of being an artist, I had never painted a self-portrait until this. So I began this artwork and added this special touch of photos from my life to make it more personal and to honor everything I love. Now onto how I actually made this. First, I created a collage of photos like I mentioned before. I did this by printing, cutting, and gluing little photos together in a circle. Then I painted them to look like bubbles. This bubble includes photos of my pets. This bubble includes photos of my friends. Lastly, this bubble includes photos of my family. To create myself in this piece, I painted large pieces of paper a few different shades to match my skin tone, and then cut them out into little pieces and glued them together on a large board to make my face. I also did the same for my hair. After I got the basics of my face done, I painted my mouth and eyes on separate pieces of paper because they are important parts of my face, so they needed more detail. I used acrylic paint for all of this. Then I took some pattern paper and used that to make my shirt. Lastly, I made the background with another piece of pattern paper, collaging it by ripping it apart and gluing it down. Then I glued down all of these bubbles onto the background. This is how I created this piece. It took lots of time and was difficult at times, but I love how it turned out, and the message behind it makes it even more meaningful. You too can create something like this, a collage artwork with common items like magazine paper or construction paper or even tissue paper. I created another piece similar to the Bubbles of Life in my school art class. This piece is based off of one of my favorite songs, As the World Caves In, and was actually a little bit of inspiration for the Bubbles of Life. Now, another piece. I created this artwork back in 2019, so I've grown a lot since then, but I still see it as great. This is an oil painting, which is similar to acrylic paint, but it dries very slowly. Having a lot of time before the paint dries brings a lot of positives, giving room for lots of blending and mixing colors without worrying about drying time. But it can also bring negatives. Because it takes so long to dry, it can be hard to complete oil paintings quickly. Long drying time also increases the chance of making mistakes, like if you accidentally touch places that aren't dry and end up messing them up. Lastly, oil paint is generally expensive, so it's hard to make a lot of pieces using it. Now, onto how I used oil paint. In oil painting, it's common to have something called an underpainting. This is where you get the shade, the darks and lights of a painting, before going in with the colors. This is typically done with a brownish color. To do an underpainting, you focus on the shadows and the highlights of the photo or inspiration, and you emulate it without worrying about the hue or the actual color. Then, once the underpainting is dry, you go in with fun colors and bring the painting to life. I enjoyed using oil paints, and there are definitely positives to using it rather than acrylic, but it can also be tricky sometimes. Thank you so much for watching!